Hey there, Indiana. Good afternoon. I am back. Scott Aaron Rogers here on Progressive Indiana Network with a special presentation as we welcome Jessica Bunch from MADVoters to the show to discuss this past week in the Indiana Statehouse. So, Jessica, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, for the folks who do not know, why don't you remind everybody what MADVoters is and what you guys do?
Yeah, so MADVoters, we are a local and volunteer powered organization. We're not part of any national organization. We're not a political party. We're just a nonprofit founded and focused on empowering civic engagement and progressive policies through the state level education, outreach, and advocacy.
Very good. And you've got a fantastic tool available on your website there at madvoters.org. This bill tracker, it allows you to follow along with all of the legislation that you guys are tracking, and you track them all. But you do
Yes.
have some high priority bills highlighted right there on the main page, many of which we will talk about today. But you also have a mobile friendly spreadsheet that gets deep into every single piece of legislation that has been presented, filed at the State House this year. Is that right?
Yeah, so on both our website and on our tracker, we have just the bills that MADVoters has deemed falls into one of our buckets of things that we are really tracking. So you'll see on our spreadsheet, you'll see both oppose and support bills. When you're on our website, you can actually put in your location. And so things are targeted towards you and has like your legislators' information. So you know who to contact. But in the background, MADVoters, we are reading every single bill, every single amendment, and making sure that we understand what our legislators are actually bringing to the floor.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are reading them. Sometimes the legislators themselves aren't even.
No, they're not. With this special, highly sped up legislative session, it's been said many times by committee chairs that we got this language last minute. We haven't had a chance to fully finalize it. Let's go ahead and pass it, even though this bill needs a lot of work.
Can we talk briefly a bit about why the session is so sped up? I mean, does it have anything to do with the fact that they wasted several weeks in December on this redistricting thing, or is that just
Yeah, it's
also the way it is?
crazy. So they said rather than calling in a special session for that failed redistricting bill, they instead called it session starting early. So 2026 started in December, where they spent 2 weeks talking about one bill. There were a couple committee hearings about other bills, but nothing really moved forward other than that redistricting. So what that means when session started in January, on January 6th, that we were already a month behind schedule. So rather than, this is normally a shortened year because it's not a budget year. Normally session on even years ends around like mid-March. Instead, they're looking at ending in mid-February this year. So this week is the last week for committee hearings in the originating chambers. So committee reports are due next Monday. And then second reading and third reading all happen next week. And that means that bills will be crossed over. So if a bill doesn't get heard this week in committee and pass, that means that bill's no longer moving forward unless it's bad language being rolled into another bill.
So you mentioned that this is the last week for committee hearings coming up, right? Not the one we just
Yeah.
had, but this
This one coming
tomorrow.
up. Yep. So the only thing is, if a committee normally meets on Monday, last Monday was their last week. They don't get to reschedule to meet since tomorrow's the holiday for
Oh yeah.
MLK. So, but Tuesday through Thursday, those are the last days that bills will be heard in committee in their originating chamber. So that means if you look here on that side, we have a graphic of the process. We're in that first section where Senate bills are heard in the Senate and House bills are heard in the House. So a bill has to pass the Senate committee before it's then moved on to second reading, which is when the legislators can add amendments on the floor with the whole chamber. And then third reading, which is when the final vote happens, and then it passes over onto the opposite chamber. So this week, We're just looking to see what's going to actually get heard, what's going to get voted on. Legislators have, or committee chairs have said they really only have time for about 5 bills per committee. When each legislator could, I think on the House, they were allowed to submit 5 bills this year, each, so all 100. So that could have been 500 bills there. And then on the Senate side, they're normally allowed around 10 bills. So imagine picking only 5 per each committee to actually be heard.
Well, so why, I guess, is the committee process so important here? I mean, before we even get into any of the bills, like, why are these committee deadlines so important? And how does that relate to like the leadership of these committees and how they control which bills live and die?
That's a great question. So committees are important for a couple different reasons. One, it's where the real work on a bill can get done. So it's where the committee members who are supposed to be experts in that subject can add amendments. They can talk about the bill. It's also the only time that there's public testimony. So where people can come in as regular Hoosiers and talk about why this bill is important to them or how this bill will impact them. It's when different subject matter experts can come in and testify about a bill. So if it's a medical bill, there might be some different doctors there to talk about it. Or if it's a bill about anything, different experts can be there. And then the chair of the committee is really the stopping point. He's the firewall, or she's the firewall of deciding what bills can be heard. So if that chair doesn't like a bill, they don't have to ever call it. We can put, as the public, we can put pressure on that chair to hear that bill or to not hear that bill. But really, it's up to them to decide, and they can stop a bill in its tracks by never letting it have a committee hearing.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the putting pressure on your legislators, because as we go through these, we're gonna show many of these graphics on the screen that I pulled from your bill tracker website, and all of which have the information to contact your legislator there, either senator or your representative, and that's got location services turned on. If you want, it will tell you exactly who your senator and representative are for your area on there.
Yeah,
which
and
is
I want to
super
say,
helpful.
MADVoters, we're also not collecting your location data. So don't feel like we're abusing all that information that you're putting in. It's not being collected on our side.
Yeah, just for your information, so you know who to contact. And there also is a way, I understand, through on the MADVoters website, you have a URL where folks can give their testimony, type something in and have it presented that way also.
Yeah, because so most committee sessions or floor sessions, anytime where you can give testimony, happens during the normal work hours. So most people can't take off work and get down to Indianapolis. Like, I'm based in Fort Wayne, and there's some bills on Wednesday that are really important to me, but I can't get off work to get down there. So what we're doing this year as MADVoters, since we're really voice of the people, is if you submit your written testimony about a bill, we will hand those over to every committee member in the chamber so that you can make sure that your voice gets heard. I also highly recommend that you call your legislator, you call the chair, and you email both of them. And they can be super simple calls, like just, "Hi, my name's Jessica. I'm your constituent, and I oppose Senate Bill 286. Please do not vote for this." What the legislative aides have to do is make a tally of everyone who calls, and everyone who emails. So they do at least have to listen, but they might not listen all the way. So that's why we also want to provide your words of why this bill matters to you and get it to those committee members.
All channels, right? They're going to hear you somewhere, hopefully.
Exactly.
And I also understand you guys have scripts. Like, if people are going to call, and they should, you have scripts available on the MADVoters website to help people with what they should say.
Yes, we do. And it can be very simple. We also include some different talking points that you're welcome to include, because it's also like a learning opportunity for you of why this bill should matter to you. But We also are trying to make it as easy as possible. I'm a millennial and I have the millennial phone anxiety. So knowing that I can just call even during not normal hours and get the voicemail, those are just as important as the calls that happen to as the ones that happen during the day.
Fantastic. Well, you want to dig into some of the meat here, Jessica, and we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
look at some of the bills that are coming up. So, like you said, next week is the last week for committees, and if you see bills that you support on the tracker, which you should go to, it is time now to contact the chairperson and urge them to schedule that bill for a committee hearing. There are some good bills that you are tracking that haven't had a hearing yet that you want to highlight. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, we have quite a few really great bills that have not got a hearing at all. So we really highly recommend you go through our tracker, see what bills really matter to you, and put some pressure on that chair. And if your legislator happens to be on that committee, put pressure on them to put pressure on the chair. Sometimes, like your legislator already might be supportive of an issue that you are, if you happen to be in one of those great districts. Putting pressure on them to put pressure on the chair is just as important too.
So one of those, which I've got pulled up right here, is House Bill 1021, having to do with the safe storage of firearms.
Yeah. So what this bill does is it's just an easy way to keep people safe and reduce the unintentional deaths and accidents from gun violence. Pretty straightforward of just making sure that something is stored correctly. We've seen too many terrible stories of kids getting access to the firearms and bringing them to different locations. So this bill is just about protecting the safety of everyone by being the smart gun owner and keeping your firearms stored properly.
Right. There's not any like big government overreach and taking your
No,
guns away. It's just,
no.
hey, keep them away from the kids, huh?
Yeah, and it's a really common sense bill. You would think that everyone already is doing this as a safe gun owner. But unfortunately, not everyone thinks with that much foresight. So this is just one of those bills to help make sure that everyone's being safe.
And I believe we've found through polling, even among like NRA lifetime members, right, that folks that gun people support legislation like this,
Yes.
but we need Hoosiers to contact their representatives in order to move things along. I understand that Representative Wendy McNamara in the House is your point person there, and in the Senate there is a similar bill called Senate Bill 130, and that is Aaron Freeman, right?
Yep. So I would call both of those chairs. I think both of their committees are something along like courts and criminal code. They both have different names on each chamber, and sometimes I get them mixed up between which chamber is which. But both of those two, I know that Senator Freeman, he is a former law officer. So I think really playing to that field of this is something that just keeps people out on the field safe as well.
And then, well, we said that the point person there in the House is Representative Wendy McNamara. I guess while you've got her on the phone, maybe you should also bring up House Bill 1073, which has to do with ending the rape kit backlog. Can you give us some more information about that?
Yeah, so this bill is one that we've had come up multiple times with very little movement. And that I think is so extremely disheartening. Right now,
Yeah.
there is an extreme backlog of rape kits being processed. So that means people who actually went through the traumatic experience of getting a rape kit and having everything swabbed and sent off. All of that is just sitting, waiting for it to be heard. I think I don't have the exact number here in front of me, but I know that it's at least a year, if not more. I want to say close to 3, but I could be wrong on that number.
Oh my.
And so that's just all of these people are not getting the justice that should be happening. And also means that there could be these rapists out that maybe shouldn't be out right now. because they're not being prosecuted.
And we should note here that the women who have gone through the process of actually, having a test kit taken is a small subset of sexual assault victims as it is.
Extremely small. I think it's 1 in 3 women are raped, and I think it might be 1 in 5 men. So it's both women and men who have this rape kit, and also people not on either of those two sides of the spectrum. But it's such a small number that actually gets a rape kit processed, not just from taking the traumatic initiative to get it, but also convincing the law enforcement or the hospital that one needs to be taken. So you think on those, that is such a small subsection. How is this so far backlogged? And why is our state not prioritizing making sure that people are safe and that traumatic crimes like this aren't happening to everyday Hoosiers?
Oh, I know you pointed out that this happens to men as well, but this largely happens to women. And I get the impression that maybe Indiana lawmakers don't much care for the women of this state. Stick a pin in that. We'll come back to that later as well, I am sure. But there is one more bill that you had highlighted that still needs a committee hearing, and that is Senate Bill 79, if I can find it.
Yeah, so this
and
bill
that is from Ed Cook, right? Senator Ed Cook.
This is actually, it was written by Ford, but it's currently in Cook's committee.
I see.
Yep. So what this bill is about, we're all hearing a lot about all the data centers that are being built all across our state and ruining our wetlands and our water, and not paying our taxes either. They're all getting tax abatements. What this bill is about is just some transparency around who is funding these, who is developing, what is their electricity usage going to be, how is it going to impact other Hoosiers in the area, what's it going to do to their electric bills. So if we're going to be, as what Governor Braun wants, like the head of the #1 state of data centers, then we want some transparency around that and how that's actually affecting our Hoosiers, and making sure that this isn't just lining the pockets of already rich companies and rich individuals. And then also they're not paying taxes. They're not building, they're not paying for the extended roads that are happening. It's just absolutely bonkers. And so we want some transparency around that.
And we should also note here, now this is a bill written by a Democrat. You said Senator J.D. Ford as the author of this bill, but there have been bipartisan efforts, nonpartisan efforts in communities across the state to try and keep these data centers out of their communities. We saw a successful defense in southeastern Marion County just last year, where folks banded together again across the political spectrum. I know there were folks on the city council, both Republicans and Democrats, that were involved in organizing those efforts to keep, I want to say it was a Google data center out of their area, but these things keep popping up. I know there's one potentially under development in Martindale Brightwood, a predominantly black neighborhood in Indianapolis right now, that has support of their Democratic city councilor, who's lining up behind the Republican governor Mike Braun and his support for data centers here. So this is not your typical red versus blue kind of bill here. I think that you're going to find support from Hoosiers of all walks of life that want to see accountability for these projects.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring light to one of our community partners, Earth Charter. They're doing a really great education series on their TikTok about all these different data centers. They also have multiple different actions you can take. So after you call the committee chairperson, you then also go to Earth Charter site and see all these other actions that you can take to stop a data center near you. I know I missed the Fort Wayne city council meeting, but it sounds like things got heated there this week about the Google data center that was built over our wetlands. And so Earth Charter they have a list. I think it's almost 20 or more different data centers that are being built all across the state, not just in our big cities like Fort Wayne and Indianapolis, but in small rural communities as well.
Okay, so I guess that is the bills that have not yet had a hearing that we would like to get one. Now, if we can move on, there were some bills that did move forward this past week, where further action is expected this coming week, beginning Tuesday again.
Yes.
So that means there is still time to call your legislators about these. They're out of committee now. They're to the point where the entire, well, either the House or the Senate are beginning to amend them, right?
Yeah, some of these bills are bills where they got heard in committee and testimony was heard, but there wasn't actually a committee vote yet. So some of these bills are ones that we want to still put pressure on the committee members to oppose or to support if it's a supportive bill. Most of these are opposed bills. So we'll want to make sure that we're having the committee to vote no, but if it goes on and moves on to second reading, and third reading, then we'll want to make sure that we're reaching out to the full chamber to vote against these. Unfortunately, it is a very fast process. So if, let's say, our first bill here that we're going to talk about is House Bill 1423 and the Education Committee on the House side, if that gets a vote on Tuesday, it could be into second reading on Wednesday morning in the House. So that's why having our tracker is very important to keep an eye on as things are moving quite fast. But a bit about this bill of what 1423 does is it really reduces the governing power of the IPS school board. Testimony was heard for, for multiple hours on last week. Take a drink of my coffee here to help my voice. But what our state legislation seems to be obsessed with IPS and ruling over the Indiana public school. So that's what it stands for, the Indianapolis public school system. And what this is going to do is this is going to give power to the charter schools to bring in their own school board members and make it so that our school boards don't have as much power over this other board that gets appointed. So there's going to be two different types of boards. One gets the public vote, but those ones are the ones who don't get to actually make the decisions around a lot of different governing parts. I think it's about financial information. It's about the curriculum. All of that is extremely important. I know Devin was on last week, who is much more an expert in education than I am. My expertise is more on the healthcare side. But this is a bill that we're highly concerned about. And so we really want to make sure that everyone is calling all the members on that education committee and urging them to vote no for it. I think their next hearing, I think I have it here, of when theirs is scheduled.
This is Wednesday morning here in the show notes.
Yes, it does. Wednesday morning at 8:30. That's when the committee meets. And so sometime around that bit, they'll be voting on this bill. Could be at the top. It could be at the bottom. They change their schedule every time they talk. So I highly recommend between now and on Wednesday morning, you give all of these committee members a call and send them an email.
And this is the thing that we've been tracking around here. I talked to a concerned IPS parent. I think that was in November or maybe early December when when Indianapolis and Mayor Hogsett and his blue ribbon panel or whatever were discussing this ILEA, the Indiana Local Education Alliance thing that they put together, which, yes, like you said, it subverts the democratically elected IPS school board. They're still there, but they're essentially neutered and placed under the thumb of a mayorally appointed board, which will be stacked with quote unquote school choice supporters. And this is one that we don't have flagged in the notes, Jessica, but I also believe there is legislation up for debate to do the same thing to South Bend schools.
Yes, there are for both South Bend and I think like South Bend, Mishawaka area, there is this, and that has been kind of like the sister one to everything that we're seeing with IPS is that's what they're trying to do in the South Bend, Mishawaka area as well. And they're just like, I think, one step behind. So it's really, we're watching this schools, we're seeing it happen in Marion County. Next, we're going to see it up in the North Central area. So really, this eventually we're going to see trickle down to the full state. It will not surprise me if we don't stop these bills now.
And folks might want to go back and check out last week's episode I did with Devin Wellington, where like you said, she's more the education specialist, and we sort of talked about where these bills were headed, really, as we were just beginning session, right? We talked about the broad attack on public education in general. I think if you go back to last year's session, there was a bill to like shut down several school districts entirely, including Gary Community Schools was one of those. It always seems that they're picking on school districts that have large minority populations, which I don't know. It doesn't seem like a coincidence.
No, definitely not at all. It's very obvious that this is targeted towards areas that have multiple different minority groups in them, where we see a lot of friction between the minority groups and who has the power. So it's definitely not a coincidence, and definitely we're going to see going as the larger national conversation around people and minorities is getting heated, and we're going to see it happen here as well if our legislators just trying to keep Black, Brown, Latino students from being able to receive great health, great education that is equitable and affordable.
And for those communities to have a say in it through their democratically elected representatives. There's another bill sort of, I guess, related in that it creates more pathways to convert public schools to charter schools. Like, hey, they're going to, threaten to close these districts. They're going to threaten to close schools. Well, then you got these buildings there. That's an asset that privatizers can potentially use to make a buck. And I'm looking for House Bill 1176, which might be one of the ones that I don't have on the screen already. But while I pull that up, why don't you go ahead and talk about House Bill 1176?
So 1176 will also be heard in actually it has passed the education and it's been reassigned to Ways and Means. So what that means is anytime a bill has some sort of financial aspect to it, it then has to go through either appropriations on the Senate side or Ways and Means on the House side to make sure that this fits into the budget that the state passed last year. So that's why we're also seeing an accelerated rate of why only so few bills can be heard in committee, because if it is heard in education and passes, it then has to go to a second committee and get passed before that committee report deadline. So 1176 is a bill that makes it so that charter schools, they don't have to have elected school boards accountable to taxpayers and voters, and they can be exempt from some regulations required of public schools and have a well-documented history of fraud and closure. So this is the one where they can sell the public school building for $1 to the private charter schools, who can then turn around, make a bunch of money, and then leave when all your kids start failing, and they don't have to be held accountable for those rates and for our kids not getting the education that they deserve.
If you ever hear the phrase somebody talking about like stripping and selling the government for parts, this is what they're talking about. Things like schools and hospitals that were perhaps built as public assets that were paid for with taxpayer dollars. Then you get folks in the legislature come in, sell them off to private interests at a steep discount. And
yes,
boy, if that doesn't smell like corruption, I don't know what does. Unfortunately, I did not have the graphic pulled for 1176, but hey, MADVoters.org, bill tracker, check it out there. We'll have next steps one needs to take. There was another bill that you're monitoring. So, well, a couple of them, and I kind of sort of want to treat these as a unit. We were just talking about the Indiana GOP's priorities in this session, and I know the House had like 4 priorities that they were highlighting a couple of them were utility affordability and housing affordability, and we don't need to necessarily talk about why these things are so unaffordable and how the big developers and big utilities are huge Republican donors. But let's deal with now and these two bills specifically. Let's start with the utility bill. That is House Bill 1002.
Yeah, so House Bill 1002 is going to be heard in committee on Tuesday morning, I believe, at 10:30. Yep, that's what we have on our thing here. This bill, it's a large bill, has a lot to it, so a lot of different parts and a lot of different jargons. And it seems promising to us, but we want to make sure that we're monitoring it to make sure that it stays good for the consumer affordability. We want to make sure that that remains the main priority of this bill, that it doesn't get inflated with different approved utility hikes or different tax credits to these different energy providers. We want to make sure that they're not giving any more power to these utility companies to raise the rates. So the way the bill is currently written, we're in supportive, but it's like we're supportive, but we're keeping a close eye on this because we know that our bills like this will get passed in committee, and then second reading, it gets some different amendments added that completely change the language as these utility companies put pressure on legislators. They'll see like, oh, your bill passed in committee, but this is bad for us. They put pressure on it and the bill completely flip-flops. So right now we want to just make sure that we're putting pressure on the committee members that they pass this bill and that they don't add any language amendments to it that completely change and give more power to these utility companies.
This is a very nice wooden horse. You got to make sure there's no Trojans hiding inside it.
Exactly.
Or was it the Greeks? I don't remember. I get it, man.
I think it was the Trojans. I think it's been a bit since I took literature class, but pretty sure it was the Trojans.
Yeah. So, so hand in hand with the utility bill is the housing affordability bill, and that is HB 1001. So that would be, if I know the way they name things around there, that would be the House's top priority bill.
Yep, that's true. So for those who might not understand the numbering process, bills get the numbers based on when they're submitted. So normally the first bills that are submitted are the most important bills to that chamber, and all House bills start at 1001. So this would be the very first bill that they were submitted and the one that's most important to them. And what this bill is supposed to help increasing the housing supply, particularly affordable housing, by streamlining the approval process and reducing local regulatory barriers. And this all sounds good on paper, but we do have an asterisk of which barriers are they going to remove? Would this make it unsafe affordable housing? Like, are we building paper houses for folks, and then 5 years down the road, all of these houses are falling apart and we're back to square one?
This bill brought to you by the Straw House Council. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So this bill, housing is not affordable for Hoosiers right now. And it's really frustrating when you hear that around the country saying like, oh, Indiana is such an affordable place to live. But in reality, for many Hoosiers, it's not. And this would definitely help out the people who need these affordable subsidies and can't find a house right now. It's very hard to even find a place to rent these days where your rent isn't above $1,000. So this bill aims to help both of those issues, and we'll just be keeping an eye to see if it stays this way. So that will be heard also on Tuesday morning at 8:30, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So this is another one that on the bill tracker does not have either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It is we're keeping an eye on it. It has potential, but it also has the potential to be abused depending on what kind of amendments are added to it.
Exactly. Yep.
Last one, I guess, that I wanted to look at, in which further action is expected this coming week, the ones that move forward, and you highlighted Senate Bill 8. That's 88. I want Senate Bill 8.
Yes, Senate
Well,
Bill
again,
8.
I think I know I've got the graphic for that one, so let me pull that up. But go ahead and start on 8.
Okay, Senate Bill 8 is definitely one that we're concerned about. So it is one that we're opposing, and it is all about the financial independence for many of the public libraries that are going through a budget approval process. It would be taking their budget approval and giving it over to the local government. So that'd be either your city or your county, your township, depending on how your library is set up. And it would, instead of the library board. So most libraries have a board. That's the people who approve their budget. That's the ones that all decisions are made through. But this bill would be like, you know what? We don't trust these boards anymore. We want, your local city council to be the one that is approving this budget. We see a lot of red flags with this, especially as we're seeing all these attacks on libraries and what kind of material that library can have, if that library can even exist. Unfortunately, right now, books all across the board are being under attack, and we know why, because knowledge is power. And this is just another way to make sure that our nobody can understand what's going on if they can't access the different resources to expand, because libraries are more than just books. They're the place where people can go to get free internet, to apply for jobs. It's the place where you can go to build a community, to find people like you, to bring your kids to story time, to meet other moms who have a toddler that's throwing a tantrum during their library hour. It's the place where you can go find some cookbooks for different healthy meals. There's so many different things that a library provides to its community, and we don't want to see any of that taken away by some local authorities who might not quite understand everything that a library brings to the table.
Yeah, and the library has been under attack for the last couple years as the Christian nationalists have drummed up this moral panic about, God forbid that they have, queer affirming books in public libraries.
In Bluffton, they hated that the public library even had rainbow colored bracelets for kids. So,
and then this is kind of where our Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith got his start, was going after the public libraries there in Hamilton County, and that didn't pan out. There was backlash to it, so maybe try another avenue.
Yeah. So this time instead, he's Micah's going through Senator Byrne to get it passed that way instead, and so we're going to see that this bill just gets stopped right away. Very early 7:30 meeting on Tuesday, and we urge you all to contact the chair and over in task and fiscal policy and all of the community members to vote no against this bill.
Oh, Gary Byrne, the gift that keeps on giving, is also the author of one of your high alert bills. And I guess I want to spend the rest of our time looking at these, just a couple of them that are big red flags that you've got your eyes on. And like we said, Byrne is the author of one of these. Devin and I talked about this a bit last week. This is Senate Bill 88, which I refer to as like a poo-poo platter of Christian nationalist culture war slop.
Yes. Senator Byrne loves to just bring the worst things to the table. I think every year we end up with a viral video of Senator Byrne just being not the best senator for your area. This bill, Senate Bill 88, is mandating that all schools, regardless if they're a public school or not, to make sure that they have some different conservative religious instructions always posted, including having the 10 Commandments posted in every classroom. It's like Senator Byrne never heard the separation of church and state. And I love that he likes to call out, well, this is what our forefathers thought. And I don't believe this is what a bunch of old men wanted in our public schools 250 years later.
No, they were pretty explicit about it, but guys like Byrne are under the thrall of a pseudo-historian named David Barton, who has very successfully perpetuated this myth that this is a Christian nation, and has a lot of followers on the far right. Sorry, just meant to
No,
interject
it's
a little
okay.
context there to that. But yeah, so what else is buried in that thing?
Yeah, so other things that are buried in this bill, and excuse me for reading through the notes here because this is, again, not my area of expertise, but this is also wanting to make sure that we have a conservative perspective of governance in the classrooms and waiting till marriage to have children. It restricts school discussions on racism, sexism in class, and it mandates that colleges accept the classic learning test, which is based on nativist and conservative standards, in addition to the SAT and ACT. So he's really just throwing the whole Bible at the school and wanting every public school to adopt these methods.
Yeah, and these this is it's a real grab bag.
Yeah.
You know, any of these things, I don't think any of these things should pass, but at the very least, they should all be debated separately.
Yes. And I'm surprised that this bill even has a committee hearing scheduled, but it is on the schedule for the Senate Education Committee on Wednesday at 1:30. And right now, testimony hasn't happened for this bill. So this is one of those that you can come in and testify against this bill. You can do that by signing up in the morning of, is normally when they open up sign up sheets for you to register to testify. Or, like we mentioned at the top of this conversation, that you can submit your written testimony to MADVoters, and we are not going to edit it to make sure that it's our talking points. We're going to submit your testimony exactly as you submit it to us, and get it in the hands of every committee member.
And again, that is at tinyurl.com/mv-testimony. I'll give you that again before we are done here at the end of the show. So moving on, another high alert bill, and all of these have something in common. These are far right Christian nationalist culture war bills. Number 182 really pisses me off. This is a direct attack on friends of mine. Like,
exactly.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, so Liz Brown is my number one most hated person in my heart. I only allow myself like 5, and she's been at the top for like the last 10 years. So Liz here is wanting to erase all legal representation of trans, intersex, and non-binary Hoosiers by declaring that there are only 2 sexes. It's defining what both sex and gender mean. Making sure that they're synonymous terms, even though we all know that those sex and gender are 2 very different things, and essentially saying that only men and women exist in code. And it's all based off of biological characteristics of what chromosome and anatomy you have. It prohibits any changing of your gender marker on your birth certificate. It's completely bonkers because 1, trans people exist. 2, intersex people exist. There are people who have different chromosomes than just A and B. And so this bill is a direct attack trying to erase trans and intersex Hoosiers across the board. And it's absolutely abhorrent that this even has a committee hearing. So this is going to be heard in double check which committee it is. It's going to be heard in the health committee at 9 a.m. In room 431 by that's Chairman Ed Charbonneau's committee. And let me check the day on this because I just realized that my notes just said the time. And trying to read and talk at the same time, it doesn't work. Okay, we have it on the screen. It's on Wednesday. And so I'd really like to see as many people as possible show up. This hasn't had any testimony yet, so we can make this hearing go on forever by having hundreds of people show up and go to testify on this bill, saying that Liz Brown is an absolutely transphobic, terrible person. And we will not stand for this as Hoosiers, and stand with our trans brothers and sisters and our intersex friends to make sure that this bill doesn't get passed.
Yeah, for as much as these folks like to talk about how they know biology, and biology is there's a man and a woman, and everything's very black and white, and yeah, it turns out that that actually rejects science. Like you said, intersex people exist. People with non-traditional chromosomal arrangements exist. And also, I bet this committee probably isn't actually taking into account the testimony of trans people unless they insert themselves into that situation. So that is up to our trans friends and neighbors and us, their allies,
Yeah.
to get on these people. And I should point out, Mr. Charbonneau, Senator Charbonneau, the chair of that committee, he's not one of the worst ones. You might get a fair hearing with that guy, so call him.
Yeah, you will probably end up limiting testimony to 3 minutes. That's generally what they do when there's a lot of people there. But this is one of those bills that we should not just say, oh, our trans friends are going to protest this bill. As allies, we have to be allies and stand up and put ourselves as that shield in front of them instead of having to argue their existence in front of a board of hostile people. It will not surprise me that Liz or Senator Johnson, who's also on the committee, that will argue back with testifiers. So I do want to make sure that people are prepared, that there's a chance that you could have a bulldog trying to bark at you. But really, Liz is scared. Her seat is up for election and the party's no longer supporting her. So she's throwing all the big guns at the wall to try and make it so that she can keep her position and not get primaried in her own party.
You know, it's ironic though, because like you've said, Liz Brown has been one of the most far right ghouls in state government for some time now, and yet she has drawn the ire of Attorney General Rokita and U.S. Senator Jim Banks for not being far right enough.
Yeah,
and they're trying to primary her.
Yeah, my 3 most hated people are fighting each other, and as much as I want to eat the popcorn, I want to also make sure that they all just get stopped where they're at right now.
Well, hopefully they can metaphorically beat the hell out of each other and all of them come out damaged in the end. The final bill that we have flagged here to look at today is Senate Bill 236. Again, more right-wing Christian nationalist culture war stuff, more attacks on women. And this one is, I understand, attempts to criminalize receiving or mailing abortion pills like mifepristone in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, so from another Northeast Indiana legislator, we make a lot of great ones from up in my area, but Senator Tyler Johnson, who is an emergency room doctor, but not a doctor you would want to run into in the emergency room, brought up this bill that's going to be heard in the Senate Judiciary. Interesting, it's in Judiciary and not Health, about mailing or receiving abortion pills and criminalizing it. And this is the biggest attack on abortion that we've seen in Indiana since the abortion ban was passed in the special session in 2022. And what this bill does is it criminalizes anyone who receives it, who mails it. It enables private citizens to file wrongful death lawsuits against organizations that provide the abortion pills. It redefines what terminated pregnancy reports as public reports, and it requires, sorry, I lost my line, and it requires the Indiana Department of Health to publish them online, violating patient and doctor privacy. And it expands the jurisdiction of the Attorney General, meaning that even if a local prosecutor declines to act, the Attorney General still can. And so this bill is targeting all pregnant Hoosiers to make sure that they can't receive the care that they need. Most of Indiana is in not just a hospital desert, but an even larger OBGYN desert. It's very hard to find one that has availability, or even one in your county. Most counties in Indiana don't have one. Often it's up to over an hour drive to even just see your OB. So this would not just criminalize those who are seeking to terminate the pregnancy, which should be allowed. A person should be able to make their own decisions about their body. But this also would impact those going through a miscarriage and knowing that they're not going to be able to get to a hospital to get the prescription that they need. So they can't just reach out to their doctor to get that mailed to them. That would fall under this. Or if you have an ectopic pregnancy, being able to take those kind of drugs. And so this really is just Senator Johnson saying, like, hold my beer, let's go after it even more. And in the fact that I know he's going to argue this as a doctor and as a medical professional, that he knows what's best. And it's clearly that this is a biased view and not off of what's actually best for the health of Hoosiers.
And we should note already, abortions in the state of Indiana have dropped drastically since 2022, when they since Roe fell, and our state was among the first to pass a highly restrictive anti-abortion bill. This, by receiving mail pills by mail from out of state, is about the only way Hoosier women can receive that care that they need in those situations. And Senator Johnson take away that last lifeline.
Yeah, it would just leave being able to cross state lines, and that is cost prohibitive. You have to find childcare. You have to, often many states have that unnecessary waiting moment between when you have the ultrasound versus when you can actually have a procedure or have pills prescribed, so that you have to then find a hotel room, you have to find transportation, you're missing days of work. All of this really is just to criminalize those in situations where that need or want to have an abortion. No one should have to argue why they should make this decision. I think many of our legislators would say that's a win that our abortion numbers are down. But then we also look at how many of our different other systems that are at capacity. We're looking at them completely stripping what SNAP benefits get people, what SNAP benefits are, what Medicaid. As a little bit of a side tangent, in one of the committee meetings last week, I was listening to our Secretary of Department of Health talk to the committee, to the Appropriations Committee, and he told Senator Quadora that SNAP benefits are just for supplemental food. It should not be for feeding a family of 4. If people want more food with their SNAP benefits, they should just learn how to find sales better. So obviously our legislators do not care about healthy, happy Hoosier families. No, they're just wanting to criminalize people taking the actions that they need to keep themselves in a better situation.
So our good friend Katie has dropped a last-minute addition into the show notes over here, very, very slickly, and tells us not to forget Senate Bill 285. I don't have the graphic pulled up for that one, but this bill, I briefly glossed over it during my live stream this morning on Who's Left This Week, when we were talking about Governor Braun's priorities that he supports in his State of the State speech. One of them was what he called, fighting homelessness. But Senate Bill 285, as I understand, essentially criminalizes being homeless.
Yes, essentially, and I don't have it on my printout notes, so please forgive me as I speak through this. But what this bill is doing is making it, sorry, I'm house sitting at my sister's house, and her cat Bug just joined us on call. If you saw her get into the camera view, but if we were at my house, both of my cats would have been in it.
Yes.
Yeah. But so what this bill does is it's criminalizing homelessness of if you're camping on any public grounds, that is now a crime, and that you will be taken in. And so they're arguing that this is for the health of the homeless. People shouldn't be staying out in the cold. They should be going to the different rescues, to the different place missions that they can get a place to sleep. But what this doesn't take into account is most missions are religion based. They have lots of different requirements. Often it might be a place where only men can be or only women can be, or you can't have your kids or you can't have your dog. And so it's really people who are already in hard enough situations and making it even harder. There's also a lot of testimony was brought up about many homeless folks being veterans and them we're now like arresting our veterans who are no longer able to provide for themselves. And so this bill really, listening to the testimony was absolutely disgusting, hearing all of these people talk about how people without a house, people without a home, all these unhoused people don't deserve to have freedom. And so we saw that bill get passed in committee. It's going on to second reading. So what that means is it will be ready for debate on the Senate floor. So this is when all the different senators can put forth amendments and that they can put forth any discussion to talk to the bill author. They can discuss it. They can discuss the amendments. And then once it moves past second reading, then it moves on to third reading, which is when they do the final Senate full vote. So this is the time where you want to put pressure on your individual senator to vote no against this bill and make sure that it stops now and doesn't cross over to the House.
Yeah, and I'm sure if this thing gets a full hearing, we're gonna hear all sorts of disgusting comments. If it's been that bad in committee, wait till you open that thing up to the full floor. Gross. Well, hate to end on a downer note, but a lot of downer notes these days, Jessica. So let's take these last couple minutes, I guess, to remind people of the actions they can take. First of all, by starting off at MADVoters.org and going to your bill tracker.
Yeah, go to our bill tracker. It's madvoters.org/bill tracker, or it's right there on our homepage to easily click over. That gives you the mobile friendly view where you can put in your address information that we don't collect, and it will pull up your exact legislators. So you know exactly who to call. It'll have their phone number and their email. You can also go to our tiny URL, which will be linked on our MADVoters page, but it's tinyurl.com/mv-testimony, where you can submit your written testimony for any of these bills that MADVoters is tracking, and we'll make sure that we get that testimony to the committee or to the legislators as a whole. And I just really want to urge everyone to take those actions to actually call, leave a voicemail, send an email, because often we hear legislators throw around the words that no one reached out to them about it. And so we want to call them all liars. And we want to make sure that our voice is heard, even if you think this bill will pass. Like maybe you're having a depressed week and you think that, Indiana's going to Indiana. I say, forget that. Like, take away that apathy, because change can only happen if we all actually try to make the change. And so we want to make sure that these crappy bills don't get passed.
And look, we have recent examples. We have the redistricting fight in December. Public pressure does work.
100%. And so that's the little fire that's in my heart this week, this session, is being able to see that we were able to stop this bill. So I know that we're going to be able to stop some of these other bills. And I really believe in the power of the people. And so please, give your senator, give your representative a call and let them know which bills you support and oppose. You can see them all on our tracker, read through our notes of why we're opposing or supporting a bill, and you can make your own choice about each of them.
Yes, great source of information. Jessica, you guys do such great work at MADVoters. I don't know where I would be as somebody trying to talk about state politics without the information you provide. And it's such a valuable service for all the citizens and residents of our state. Again, madvoters.org. Go to the bill tracker, find your representatives, find your senators, contact them, call, email. Use the MADVoters tiny URL to give your testimony. All channels, let them know you are paying attention. Pressure does work. Jessica, any final words here before we take off today?
Final words, if any of this is something that you find deeply interesting and want to be a part of, we are a fully volunteer ran org, and we are always accepting new volunteers. You can reach out to us on our contact page on our website, or if you have a few bucks to spare, send them our way so we can keep doing this hard work that we're doing.
Very good. I would be remiss if I didn't also ask for funds here for the Progressive Indiana Network, who are trying to amplify voices like Jessica's and of MADVoters to across the state of Indiana, because Hoosiers often live in an information desert, even in Indianapolis, where there are news channels galore. They are not talking about these things. So that's why we exist. That's why MADVoters exists. Help us out. Help them first.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Jessica Bunch from MADVoters, thank you so much for joining us here today. Appreciate all this valuable information. And we will be back next weekend. I think Katie's going to be back for that one. So look forward to seeing her. But until that time, I'm Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.